This is the Mental Mettle Podcast, and I am your host, Coach Matt Thomann. I'm a former athlete, teacher, coach, and athletic director that switched careers after surviving cancer and a stroke in the fall of 2020. But I'm also a dad of a son and a daughter that were successful high school athletes that went on to college. Now I use that experience along with my ICF coaching certification when helping teams, coaches, and athletes from all over the country. Each week, I will pose a specific question that will help coaches of all types better understand mental toughness. In the Mental Mettle Podcast, coaches will learn to help their athletes overcome adversity without being the adversity they need to overcome. Mettle is a person's ability to face adversity in a spirited and resilient manner. It is a great skill to have for athletics and for life, but it is not something we are born with. If you want it, you have to forge your mettle. And if you listen to the Mental Mettle Podcast, you already know that, but not everybody else does yet. So help me out by ordering and wearing some sweet The Mental Mettle Podcast gear. We've got short sleeve tees, long sleeve tees, and some super comfortable hoodies. Order online today and you can have your gear in no time. But the best part is that every order helps support the show and helps me spread the message that mental toughness is a trait that can and should be built. So find the link in the show notes, order your gear, and start showing that you know how to forge your mettle. And welcome back to the Mental Mettle Podcast. Once again, I'm your host, Coach Matt Thomann, and I'm here with Coach Matt Long. Remind me, Coach, you were at Camp Point, and now it's what's the name of the school now?
Well, I'm still at Camp Point High School, but we're a co-op with Augusta Southeastern, so we go by CSE or Central Southeastern.
Yes. So when did that co-op come in?
2007 was our first year for the co-op.
But you predate that by a little ways, right?
Yeah, I think I came here in 1992, so I've been here roughly 31 or 32 years.
Okay, so you've been coaching have you been coaching for all of that, Coach?
Yeah, I've been the head girls coach here for that time, and then I also coached at a couple of previous schools before I landed here.
So all told, you've got how many years of coaching in?
35.
35 years. So you're gonna have just a wealth of experience here for us, Coach.
Well, wealth of different types of things that, we've went through over our careers, and the changes in the game, the changes in the kids and everything. So
and that's something I really want to get into because you've seen a lot of change from, especially, have you been doing girls basketball that entire time?
Yes. Yep. Girls basketball. I did boys basketball for 2 years and kind of jumped over to the girls and just kind of fell in love with it and felt like, nothing against the guys, but the girls were more appreciative of the time and the things you did for them. And they didn't know everything, they were still willing to learn.
Yeah, that's I've coached both, certainly not at the level or the amount of time that you have, but it doesn't take long to feel that difference. Like it's the boys, while they have a little bit more, can have a little bit more confidence sometimes, they also they tend to think they know more, right? So you're right. A little bit more appreciative on the girl side.
Yeah, and there's a difference in coaching them. I always tell people, they go, how do you coach girls? And I always tell them, I don't coach gender. I coach athletes, period. And I don't coach them any different than I'd coach the guys. And, there are some differences. I think girls learn things quicker, but a lot of times the boys will put it to use quicker because once they learn it, they just react and do it. And the girls are getting better at it, but whereas girls maybe still think every little process through mentally instead of just doing it. So there is a difference, but I coach them. Just my expectations are just as high as when I coach football and anything else.
Yeah. So, and that's the only way you can do it. And then you just know that the result's going to be a little bit different. But so give me your background. Where are you from? What I'm sure you must have grown up playing basketball, doing some things. So what's your background?
Yeah, I went to a small high school in Bluffs, Illinois, which is still there today. I think when I was there, we had roughly 60 students in the building. But back then, we fielded everything. We played baseball, we played football, we played basketball, and I graduated in 1984 from there and went to Illinois College and got my degree in education. And from there, went out and got into the working world and made a couple quick stops at a couple small schools. And the job opened up here, and a former player of my father's was the AD here and called me up and asked me if I'd be interested in the basketball job. And I said, sure. And came down here, and, it wasn't, they hadn't had any success in the previous 10 years. I think they won one game one year, and the year before I came in, they won two. And I thought, okay, I'll come in, I'll give it a shot. And my goal was stay 5 years and kind of turn this program around and make a jump, and fell in love with the community, met my wife here, and here we are, 30 years later.
Yeah, I mean, you hit your goal, right? A while ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. and I would say that if your goal was to turn around and have some success, you definitely did that, because I don't know the number, Coach, but I did just a little bit of Googling, and I know you're over 600 wins, which is not a lot of guys hit that.
Well, I think there's two reasons for that. I don't think it necessarily means you're a great coach. I think it means you've had good athletes. Everyone knows you have to have horses to run the race, and the community support here. My parents are unbelievable. Someone asked me the other day, called me up and said, how do you deal with a parent over playing time issue, And I'll be honest with you, I haven't had a parent come in my office to set up a meeting to complain about anything since 2002. And that's just type of support we get from the parents.
Yeah, and that's what a great situation to be in. I think that, if I could add a little bit, I think it probably has something to do with the fact that you do have so many wins, and it helps. It definitely gives you some credibility there. That's really, but the fact that they trust you with it as well it feels like a great situation for you.
Well, yeah, and we came up with a slogan several years ago, and our parents all know it, and our kids know it, and our community knows it. For our basketball program, our slogan is very simple. You don't have to understand the process, just trust the process.
Yeah.
And sometimes, I remind parents of that, and they get upset. But like I said, they kind of keep it in themselves. But I just tell them, trust the process. I
Yeah.
think over the years, our program has sustained enough success that the way we go about things, in the end, it's going to be okay.
All right. So give me some insights into the Coach Long process.
Well, I mean, I've changed a lot over the years. I was an old school coach with, you didn't make your free throw, you didn't make a time, more running, more punishment. Our head football coach has really changed my mentality in that aspect over the last 10 years. Now I think to be mentally tough, you have to have well-rested athletes, both physically and mentally. People laugh and they don't believe it, but usually after Christmas, we're out of the gym in an hour and 15 minutes. I mean, we come in, we get our work done, we get out. We try to rest our kids as much as we can. We don't run sprints anymore. There's no, punishment for poor play or anything like that, because I kind of changed my attitude on that. No kid tries to miss a game-winning shot. It just happens. No kid wants to go out and play bad. It just happens. So we've changed a lot there, which I really think has helped our program. And one of the things I always tell the kids and always tell young coaches is, there's a reason why they put the carrot in front of the horse. If you put a rock in front of the horse isn't going to move. You got to put something out there that they want. And our thing that we put out there is, hey, you want to take Friday off? We have to have the best practice of the year tonight. And kids love a day off. And again, it's all within our philosophy, because we like to rest them both physically and mentally. And we take more days off, probably the most programs in the state. But I feel like it's really helped us come postseason time. I feel like we're fresh, we're injury free usually, and we're ready to go.
Yeah. So it's I'm feeling the less is more philosophy sometimes it's hard to do, Coach.
It is. And I'll tell you what, it was a hard pill to swallow when you come from a coaching background and your father is a Hall of Fame coach in football and basketball both, and he's old school. Yeah, if you don't do things right, you pay the price. You put your ass on the line, you're going to run. And it took me a long time to come over that hurdle. But again, Brad Dixon, our head football coach, won a state championship this year, 2 runners ups, and people laugh because most days he's off the field by 4:30 and they never wear full pads.
Yeah.
And that's unheard of today. But I'm telling you, I've seen the advantages, and I can't stress to young coaches enough that less is definitely more and better in a lot of aspects, especially on
How
the
did
mental
this?
side.
How did this? That feels like a big change from you. Like
It was.
the difference between you doing it year one, right,
Hmm.
and year
Yep.
31, right? Was this
Hmm.
a gradual change? Was it an overnight thing, or how did it work?
I would say it was gradual, because the first thing I had to do is, once I convinced myself I wanted to try it, is I had to buy into it. When I first started doing it, I wasn't totally sold on it, that less is better, and we just do a lot of things different. We have our kids. I mean, we shoot free throws in practice, but we do a lot of studying, and one thing we learned is the mind does not know the difference between a real and imagined experience. And, and,
Yes.
and we ask our kids shoot free throws in bed. I mean, picture themselves going through their routine. And I got that from Coach Bobby Knight. I know a lot of people aren't a big
Hmm.
Bob Knight fan, but I'm telling you, our free throw percentage went up. And some of the kids, I'm sure, don't do it. They probably tell me they do, but I think a lot of them have bought into it. And we do things like that. And so it took some time, and I'm still learning. I mean, I adjust every year, and my big thing is, if we come into practice in the first 20 minutes, it looks like dog crap for whatever reason. Well, only one thing's going to happen. It's going to turn bad.
Yeah.
And the thing I don't want is an unproductive practice that hurts our relationship, because I get full of anxiety. I jump on them. So there's times during the year I just say, "Hey, gang, we're not getting anything done. Let's get out here. Try to come back tomorrow with a different mindset, and we'll get after it. And we may
Yeah.
have to go 15, 20 minutes longer to get done what we want." And so we do a lot of things like that.
I mean, I've been a player and I've been a coach, and everybody knows that story of like, oh well, coach kicked us out of practice today, and that's not a good thing. But you're doing it. You're ending a practice before it gets to a negative point where you feel like, oh, kick. It's like, hey, this isn't working today. Let's not make it. Let's not make it worse. Let's come back and
Right.
restart.
And we never use the word kicking them out. I mean, we
That
just
and that's
don't,
what I'm
because I'm not.
saying. That's not what you're
Yeah.
doing, but everybody knows that old idea would happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But so that works for us. And even on those days when we get out early because things aren't going well, we always tap out with each other. And I think one of the hardest things is, and I've learned to do, and I've always been pretty good at this, I feel like, but a lot of coaches today will take a kid's effort or a team's play from the night before, and it'll carry over the next day in the building. I've seen it out of our young coaches, where a kid will walk by in the morning and say, "Hi, coach," and they may not speak to them, and that is the old school way. Let them know that you're upset with them. Let them know you're frustrated. Well, they know you're upset with them. They know you're frustrated. So when I come into the building the next day, what happened yesterday is over with. We got a common theme. We'll talk about the game the night before, and then I'll make them get up, move to a different spot, and that shows them, okay, we're moving on. It's time to change and get ready for the next game. And so we
Yeah.
do things like that. And there's times I get mad at them. I'm sure Jody could hear me at halftime of our game in the other locker room this year when we played them. But they know that I'd do anything for them. And today, more so than any other decade or years past, it's about building relationships, not only with the kids, but with the parents and the community. And that's so important. And a lot of coaches miss out on that.
Yeah. Some Man, that's so many good things there. I think that the idea when you're talking about like, oh, they got to know I'm mad at them. They made mistakes. They didn't do well. It's so small minded and it's so short sighted, right? It's nothing but building more of that anxiety and like you said, it's tearing down the relationship rather than building up the relationship.
Yeah. And we try not to use the word mad. They know, I always tell them, not mad at you. I'm disappointed,
Hmm.
and you guys have to understand your parents love you a lot, but there's times they're disappointed in you.
Sure.
And it's the same thing here, on my end. And I think they appreciate that, that Coach Long's not going to come to school the next day and pout, and we just don't do it. We move on. We get ready for the next game.
Well, it's not what you want them to do either, right? Like they miss a shot or they miss a play. The last thing you want them to do is pout, right? You don't want them to be like not be thinking, because it's practicing what you preach, right?
Yeah, and that's another one of our slogans. We actually have it on the T-shirt. The mistake's not what's bother us; it's the reaction after you make the
Right.
mistake that bothers me.
Yeah.
And we preach that to our kids all the time. I don't care if you throw the ball up in the stands. Don't put palms up. Don't shake your head. Don't just play the game. It's a game of mistakes, and that's
What
the way it
bothers
rolls.
me, what bothers me is and I love that you mentioned this, that the palms up, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
it seems to be it's an epidemic in even college and NBA. And it really bothers me because they set such an example of that, the palms up, and it's such a negative body language.
Yeah, that's the palms up or the shaking of the head. An official it gets you pulled pretty quick in my program, and,
Yeah.
and the kids understand that. And we've had some young kids that hadn't matured yet that would do that. I've got one on the team right now, and right now you could walk in the gym, you couldn't tell she'd scored 30 points or hadn't scored at all. I mean, she's just totally changed that side of her, and she's become a better basketball player. And mentally, she's a lot healthier because she's not carrying around that negativism in her brain while she's trying to function on the basketball court.
And I think that's so important a point to bring up, because that's something I do. The fact that you bring it up, the type of kid that will see every call or every missed shot as such a negative situation, they they will learn to carry that same idea into life, right? And they're kind of constantly
Right.
be looking for negative situations, going to be looking for things that are unfair. And if a kid leaves your program thinking that okay and acting that way, it's you're doing them a disservice for setting them up for life.
Well, and I agree with you, and I think today's age, it's hard to get good officials, and they take a lot of, a lot of criticism. But one thing, and I tell our official association, and I'm the director here at our school, and I tell officials at halftime, if we have a kid does that, I'll go in their office, I'm like, ding him up. We're not going to tolerate that. That's not what we're about here in any
Yeah.
sport. And our
Yeah.
coaches do a very good job of not allowing that type of stuff to take place. And I just think it's, when you act like that, I tell them, number one, it's a reflection on the program, but number two, it's a stronger reflection on your last name. And
Yeah.
that's not something you want to take in the working world with you.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that's just a great, it's a great, and it's not easy to do. We say this, I know we're being very matter of fact right here, but it's a difficult thing. And I think that even as the coach, it's there's still calls that you don't like, that it's hard to move away from and hard to let go.
Yeah, but let's be honest. I think in 35 years of coaching, I can only and I may have this totally wrong, but I can only think of one game I've ever coached where I really felt like I was being put to me. Officials are human. I tell our kids all
Yeah.
the time. They're like, "Well, you missed the travel. Well, you just threw the ball away 2 times." You know, so
Yeah.
everybody makes mistakes. It's a game of mistakes. Play through it,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and I appreciate our officials. I don't think they get paid enough. I don't think they get recognized enough. I think today's crowds are getting worse and worse, and I think that's a reflection on schools and their administration team. And I think we just need to tighten the loops up. And I think our kids would be would be the winners in that, because they would see our fans acting better, and it wouldn't fuel them maybe some of
Yeah. I think it's just letting that a little bit over time just slip, and things get allowed that probably shouldn't have. And I agree. The biggest piece of evidence that I could say that officials aren't appreciated enough is because people don't want to do it. Right? People know I don't want to do it. Right? So I mean, that's the all the appreciation I need. But
Well, and I always ask, the first thing I try to do if I'm on supervision at a boys' game, any sport or any other sport is if I see a parent going there, I'll just simply walk up to him and say, and I've asked our parents, where do you work? Well, I'm a secretary down at the hospital. Well, in your profession, can somebody just walk through the door, pay $3, start screaming at you? Would you like
yeah,
that? And, the answer is no. I mean, they have
yeah,
one of the toughest jobs that you can have in society today. Their job, and I often say this, is tougher than a teacher's job. One reason: most people, a lot of people, don't care what goes on between the classroom walls during the day. Then when it comes to athletics, that's the identity of the community, and they're going to protect that.
yeah.
And that's why I think their job, in a lot of ways, is one of the toughest jobs in the nation today.
It is. I think that in American culture, right, wrong, or indifference, the amount of importance that we put on athletics. I mean, I love athletics. It can be so useful. It's great. I enjoy it, whatever, but it goes overboard. And I think that's part of the reason why we getting back to the kids is why they feel so much pressure and why they want it to go so well. That's just why there's so much negative emotion there whenever things don't go well that you really have to counteract some of that with some of these positive ideas that you're doing on making sure that they're good mentally.
Yeah, and by no means am I innocent. Officials will tell you, 15, 20 years ago, it wasn't much fun coming by my bench when I was upset with you. And I've been thrown out of games before, not proud of it. I understand things happen. But I think, when we transformed our program, started looking at things differently, it helped me take a long look at myself. And anymore, I think most officials tell you, Matt Long leaves this alone. And if he does say
Yeah.
something, it's going to be in a professional manner. And I would like to think they listen to you more in that situation, if you're not on him every call. I mean, I don't like coaching against coach that every time down the court he's griping about something,
Right. Yeah.
I mean, to me, it's making a mockery of the game.
Yeah. Mental Mettle coaching is driven by a passion for sharing knowledge and experience that will allow athletes and coaches to grow, play, and live in a positive way. We offer a range of coaching and professional development services. First and foremost, we offer individual mental coaching for athletes, and it's easily the most efficient and effective way to help athletes replace fear and anxiety with positivity and confidence. Mental Mettle coaching has helped middle school setters to high school lacrosse middies to D1 offensive linemen. If you have an athlete that needs to improve their mindset in athletics, mental coaching is the answer. We also offer team coaching, which uses the same concepts as individual mental coaching, but applies them in a group setting. Team bonding outings are great, but they do nothing to address the thoughts and feelings that can derail a team. Team coaching does address that, and it's a great option for helping your team grow. Finally, Mental Mettle coaching offers social, emotional learning, professional development programs for educators and coaches. There are self-paced online programs, there are virtual coaching options, and even in-person seminars available. This PD will help increase the mental health of your staff and eventually your student athletes and the culture of your school. All of the Mental Mettle coaching programs have the same goal. Our mission is to help athletes and coaches develop a resilient and spirited mindset that will help them confidently face any obstacles or challenges they seek, regardless of their situation. If you would like to see the same in your athlete, your team, and your staff, contact Coach Thomann for more information. So you said something in there, and you've said it a couple times about how we transformed our program, or that feels like a very intentional thing. I mean, you told me like the difference between year 1 and year 31 or 35 or whatever it is very different. And you said it was gradual, but it also seems very intentional. Like you transformed and changed things on purpose. Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, number one, we started seeing our numbers dwindle. And a lot of schools are still fighting it today. Number of problems. We fight it in certain sports, and I think part of it is, kids got a lot going on, and if you can't make it fun, and you can't make it worth their while, and you can't build the relationships with them and things like that, this is going to continue to be a problem for small schools like ourselves. But I guess I was lucky enough to have somebody talk to me about, hey, this is the way the world's going. This is the direction kids are going. You young coaches, and at the time I considered myself young at 40 some, need to change that. And I started doing it. I had some personal things going on in my life that made me appreciate some things a little bit more, and gave me a lot of time to reflect on myself and some changes I need to make, not only in my personal life, but maybe, my coaching and the professional world. And, and I'm glad I did it. I've done a lot of studying. I don't know if you know Dr. Capozzi and Dr. Wells. One's a superintendent, one's a chiropractor and a school board president in Oregon. They have a thing they do called cracking the coaches code, and
Okay.
actually have them coming in this summer to train our coaches in June, or to talk to them. And it's really helped me because everybody's got certain characteristics on the Enneagram, and
Yep.
mine's a protector and a competitor. And when I start to get, my blood starts to get boiling, I think the key is you have to learn what those triggers are, what makes you get there. And then you have to learn how to very quickly change that and take you to a healthy place. And it
Yeah.
also helps you build relationships with the kids, because you understand them better, because they might be, you know, a musical type person, more of a fine arts type person, and their mentality and their thinking is totally different than a competitor and a protector. And so I've done a lot of that, and I think it's helped us. But like I said, I'm still learning. I mean, I still
Yeah.
make changes every year. We're making changes next year, and we've already
Yeah.
sat down and talked about things we can do a little different to make it better.
I think if you're not changing, you're not trying. If you're not, and it's not like, I mean, you want to change things and just to improve. I mean, you owe it to the kids. The idea of, I love your mention of the Enneagram. I love, and there's other stuff out there, but I think that I think
Right.
people that we didn't do enough of, that we do need, that really helps, is understand. If you understand how you handle situations, it gives you so much help with understand what now and understand what's, I don't want to say what's your fault, but what you can do about it. And I think that takes a level of humility, though, coach, to be able to say, look, I'm acting this way because this is my natural tendencies, this is my Enneagram, whatever, and I might have to adjust some things to fit my kids better. But again, that takes a little bit of humility to realize it's not, oh, the kids just need to change to adapt to me.
Right. I mean, and what people need to understand is, on the flip side of that, I always hear people say, well, so and so coach doesn't treat them all the same. Well, you can't treat them all the same.
I
They're all
know.
different. I mean, I may be able to coach player A hard, hard, and player C, it may take some time to get them there. And it's got to be a totally different type of instruction. It's a different type of relationship. Expectations have got to be different. And that's the thing a lot of young coaches don't understand today. We're going to coach them all the same. Well, good luck.
Yeah. It'll work. It'll work for some, but not, you're going to lose kids along the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that's really helped our program is, so many times I was talking to a coach in another district, and he had a kid that went out for a sport, and goes, he's in a spring sport. He goes, he's a good athlete, but he's not very good. I can't play him, da, da, da. And I just simply asked him, is he one of your best 9 athletes on the team? Yeah. I said, well, you know what? Take some hits, play him early in the year, and try to get him to where he can be successful, and he can help you come postseason. It's not about winning the first 20 games. It's about winning the last 5 or 6.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, we get really uptight about winning and losing, and I know that's the game, that's the goal of competition, but it gets in the way sometimes if we're trying to win every game. It's in the long run, it
Yeah.
doesn't always help.
And we have
So
two mottos. Number one is we don't have to be good till February, is what I tell the kids.
yeah,
And our other one is play to daylight. If you go deep enough in the postseason, when you're walking out practices in the sectional or the super or the state, it's light outside. And that's our motto, play to daylight, do things right. So when we hang up the jerseys, it's light when we're walking out of that gym instead of cold and dark.
yeah. And what a positive message there, right? The play to daylight. I just like that, the into the sunlight, and it's a. So here's what I'm picking up, Coach, and I'm loving this. This is you're a coach that's been doing it for 30 some years, and we're talking about doing things like knowing your Enneagram, doing visualization with your athletes, taking time off, working with the athletes and changing things. It's a refreshing idea that these are newer ideas. I don't know how newer they are, but they're not quote unquote old school coaching. I guarantee a lot of this isn't how you were coached, and
No,
I appreciate that.
but I can say this, my father was a coach, and that's not the way he coached. My high school coaches were great mentors. They were tough men, and that's not the way they coached. But I can honestly say I've taken a little bit from all of them and used it somewhere out in my career that has made us better. And like discipline. I mean, I don't care what generation you come from, discipline's discipline. It doesn't look any different in 1972 than it does in 2024. That's something
Mm-hmm.
that's got to stay steady. And, so I've taken a lot of their, the way they would handle discipline. And I've taken a lot of their stuff, and that kind of drives me in the discipline side of it. Even though I would say today I'm probably more softer. I wouldn't say softer on the discipline, but instead just calling them in, chewing them out, accomplish the same thing. We still have discipline. We have structure, making it a learning opportunity from them instead of just taking something from them they love. Well, you're going to be benched for a game. Well,
Yeah.
okay. So right now, we have a negative we have a negative wavelength going between the two of us, and that doesn't help anybody.
Yeah, and you're talking earlier about the horse and the I mean it's the carrot, it's the old thing. Is it a carrot or the stick, right? And
Yep.
yeah. So the question I have to ask though, because I think a lot of people listen to stuff like this and they just say, well, he has to do it because today's kids are soft and weak. And I just want your take on, I mean, you've been coaching for 30 some years. I mean, what is the difference in the athletes? And as the changes you've had to make, do you feel like it's something you've had to do because kids are different, or do you just think it's better regardless?
Well, I think the kids like the way we do things in our program. People can say kids are soft and they're lazy today. Well, who's to blame for that? The generation before them, their upbringing. I mean, quit pointing the finger at the kids. If you truly believe
Yeah.
that, we need to turn around and point the finger at ourselves. I don't think kids are soft today. I think kids got a lot more going on today that causes a lot more anxiety, a lot more stress. And, a lot of kids today come from broken homes, maybe without a mother or a father in the household. I think that affects our kids today. The divorce rate is at an all-time high, and you can't tell me that doesn't play a part in kids' mentality. And I don't buy into the kids are lazy and they're soft. I don't buy into that. I think if you show them why this will benefit them and my hard work would benefit them. We have kids that come out for programs here. I've got girls that come out on the basketball team that aren't very good athletes, and they know they're not, and they know I'll tell them. But the thing about it is as coaches we have to understand there's a time and place for every kid to be successful in your program. My daughter's not a great athlete. She's a junior, but by far the most spirited kid on our bench every game. And she knows that's her place. And
Mm,
she knows that makes us better. She knows that makes the culture better. So I don't buy into kids are soft today and they're lazy. I mean, there's more kids out working in the world today than was working in the world 20 years ago. And a lot of them are out working just to help out with the bills in the household.
yeah. And I also think, I mean, you can look at a difference in the athletes that are being turned out right now in high school. I mean, your high school athletes are bigger, faster, stronger, more. They can do things now that kids couldn't do 30 years ago on the basketball court. Well, you don't get those things accidentally. Like, you do it by putting in hard work. So it just doesn't. I agree with you. I don't. It doesn't jive with me to just say, oh, they're soft and what's wrong with kids, because I don't think it all checks out. I think that and I do think that they're definitely more affected by there's so many things going on around them, which is probably the more reason why you need to be more cognizant of doing them and, having a positive mentality when they do come to your school or to your practice.
Yeah, and I think the other thing we need to remember is too, there's no doubt in my mind the athletes work out more, work out longer. Their preparation for their seasons long. I mean, back in 1980s when I played, you walked in the gym November 2nd, picked up a basketball. You came right from football and picked up basketball. Well, these kids now, on any given Sunday, I can come to the building and we have kids that are in there on the shootaways. We have kids, that are working on their ball handling, whatever it may be. So it's a lot more intense today, and the community drives that, because
Mm-hmm.
that's the culture. I don't care what anyone says. That's the culture of a community. Either you're winning or you're losing. And that drives so many other aspects within the community that people don't realize.
Oh yeah. I mean, success breeds success, and if you start to be good at one program, you are in others, and it can help. I mean, and teachers can lean into that as well, so that they're doing better in grades. It's all connected.
Correct.
Yeah. So you mentioned a little bit about, and you mentioned it before we started, that you had some personal things that really changed how you coached. And you mentioned it here in the podcast just a little bit, but I wanted to, if you're willing, I'd love to dive into that on some of your personal life and how that changed you as a coach.
Well, 10 years ago, I got diagnosed with cancer. And as we were talking, basically when the my oncologist sat me down, told me what was going on, I just basically said, because it's the way I am, just basically said, give it to me in a nutshell. What's my chances? And he goes, flip a coin. I said,
Mm,
all right. Well, and for people that's been through it, you go through a lot of different stages. When I first walked out of there, I was pissed. I was like wondering why is this happening to me? I'm in my mid
yeah.
40s, and and you go through a lot of different mindsets. And then finally one morning, I just got up and I thank God for letting me put my feet on the floor, and I decided I was going to go kick it. And basketball and the school district and the kids helped me so much through that process. I mean, this was my getaway place when I was able to come, and I didn't miss practice. And everyone's like, how can you go through all that? A lot of nights I had to sit in a chair, didn't have energy to even get up. But it got my mind off of it, and it just changed who I was. I mean, my wife will tell you, 15 years ago, if a kid slammed the door and put a hole in the wall, it would have been brutal. It would have been, watch out, here comes dad. And now, now my perspective is, hey, it's a hole in the wall. We'll fix it. We'll fix it together. I'll teach you how to fix it. I'll educate you on this in case your kid does this when he gets older. But it's changed me a lot. It brought me closer to my God. It brought me closer to my family, made me appreciate life more, made me appreciate that the little things don't matter. It made me appreciate there's things you can control and you can't control. Death of a parent, you can't control that. It's part of life. Yeah, you're going to experience some grief and stuff like that, but it's out of your control. So you have to have the mindset, hey, it's time to move on. And but it changed me a lot. And I always tell people, everyone looks at cancer as a negative, and I understand why. I was there. I fought it with everything that you go through, as you know, but there's some positives that come from it, and I really believe that. And it changed me, and it changed me for the better, and it helped my coaching. I mean, one of the biggest things that made me realize is, hey, we don't have to win the first 10 games of the season, you know. And my motto is get up and win the day. But like,
Mhm.
the end line was you wanted to beat cancer. Well, the end line is in a basketball season, don't worry about what happens leading up to beating it. Just, at the end of the year, have success.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the way I view things.
Yeah. Coach, you're my guy, Coach. I mean, I love what you're laying down. It's my. I mean, I feel so much what you're talking about, and it's one of the things that I learned going through cancer and with my stroke is that we got two options when things happen. Is we can either see it as something that's happening to you or something that happens for you, and that mindset. And it can seem cheesy, right? People
Mhm.
don't get it, but it's like you're talking about how you are a better coach now because you went through cancer, right? You would never
Yep,
you'd never say, "Hey, sign me up for cancer," right? But
correct.
you're a better coach now, right? And and
Yeah,
I'm
I think you're a better person.
yeah, and a better
A lot
person,
of
right?
people, a lot of people disagree with you, but
Yeah,
I
no,
mean,
I look, we're not signing up to get cancer and we're not asking for somebody to get cancer to have these, but if you can learn how to deal with it in the right way, you come out the other side and you're like almost appreciative of it, right? Like from my perspective,
right.
I'm here doing a job that I love. I'm having a conversation with you that I'm really enjoying. I'm working with athletes, I'm working with coaches doing these things, and I would not be doing it if I had not gone through what I went through. So how do I look back at it and be upset about
Yeah, I agree with you. And what good does it do you to be upset with it?
it? That too.
I mean, it's you can't let things in the past dictate your mindset moving forward. You just can't.
Yeah. It's when you're talking about the things you can control and things that you can't control, like things that happened in the past is definitely something you can't control. It is done. It's past. I think we can learn lessons from stuff, but we can't do it. We can't change it. We can't wish it didn't happen because it doesn't do any good. Mettle is a person's ability to face adversity in a spirited and resilient manner. It is a great skill to have for athletics and for life, but it is not something we are born with. If you want it, you have to forge your mettle. And if you listen to the Mental Mettle podcast, you already know that, but not everybody else does yet. So help me out by ordering and wearing some sweet The Mental Mettle podcast gear. We've got short sleeve tees, long sleeve tees, and some super comfortable hoodies. Order online today and you can have your gear in no time. But the best part is that every order helps support the show and helps me spread the message that mental toughness is a trait that can and should be built. So find the link in the show notes, order your gear, and start showing that you know how to forge your mettle.
Right. I always tell kids, especially, something like that you can't change. If you make a mistake, then yes, fix it, move forward. You can change that. But you can't change cancer. I mean, if you get it, you get it. There's no,
Mm-hmm.
well, I made a mistake. Let me go apologize and everything will be good. It doesn't work like
Yeah.
that.
It's the same kind of idea though when you work with an athlete that I'm not going to compare cancer to actually missing a shot, right? But once a kid
Right.
misses a shot, it's done, it's over with. We can't learn anything. Like we can learn a little bit on how to deal with it, but we can't change the fact that we missed that shot, right? And it's that same idea. It's what am I going to move how am I going to move forward from this?
Yeah. And, I think the biggest thing in that situation is to build the confidence in the kid. And I have a story that I like to share with our kids. We were in a big game, in a sectional game, and we had a tremendous 3-point shooter, and she came out and she missed her first 7. And I called 2 timeouts because I could tell she was just struggling emotionally. And I'm like, keep shooting it. I don't care if you hit one, it's going to come at the right opportunity. It's going to put us over the hump. And she came out in the fourth quarter and 4 straight trips. She knocked down threes, and and she ended up going 4 for 13 for the night. But without those 4, we don't win.
Yeah.
She's terrible. I mean, not a very good shooting percentage, but without them, we wouldn't have won. And
Yeah.
and I think that's what kids need to understand. You can have negative things happen to you, but all it takes is one positive thing, and it can change the outcome of any event that you're involved in.
Yeah. And it's hard to do, but if you're especially, and that's part goes back to what you're talking about, having a kid that has to know their role, right? Like, you're talking about a kid on the bench that's there to cheer and be spirited. Well, that kid can be on the bench and could be cheering and trying to pick up their teammates, and it's not working, right? It's okay. I'm trying to cheer,
Right.
but we're not gaining the lead. But that doesn't mean we don't want you to stop doing that in the fourth quarter, even though we've got a lead. We need you more now than ever, right? So it's the same idea, whether you're a 3-point shooter or a passer or a rebounder or just somebody cheering on the bench. Like, if you have your role, keep doing your role, like, regardless of the outcome.
Yeah. Or, kids like that, kids that don't play a lot or maybe not real gifted, I just don't think they understand the impact they have. I'll bring up this girl. Her name's Jessie Bockham. She's in her 40s now. When I first came here, she was in our district. She had Down syndrome, and she applied to be my assistant. Well, she's been on the bench with me now for 32 years, and just her impact on our kids and our community, just because she just has a knack for picking them up and lightening them up, and I always tell the kids, she's a special person. She doesn't care if you win or lose. It's
Yeah.
just being around you, and she helps us so much. People don't believe it. I mean, we had CBS News with what's the guy's name that does that special every night? They came in here and did a big feature on her, and she was on the world news. I mean,
Yeah.
just the impact she has. And I've never, ever in my life seen that girl be negative, and it's just
Yeah.
amazing.
To have a little bit of that unwavering positivity, it would be just, it it's so, it would be so useful for everyone.
Yeah. And that's the other thing. I think, people are looking for ideas to change their culture, to change their team mindset. One of the biggest pieces of advice I can give you is reach out to that kid with Down syndrome, make him a part of your team. Reach out to that kid that's maybe experienced something tragic in his life. Reach out to that kid. It is unbelievable the difference they will make on your culture.
Yeah. Well, and we're not comparing the two, but the fact that your positivity level now, after going through a very negative situation, is so much higher, right? And it changes the experience, and having gone through these negative experiences helps us feel more positive, if so long as we do it the right way.
Well, and I agree with you. I won't sit here and say I'm glad I went through cancer, but now that I've went through it and I beat it and it's changed me, I'm not bitter about it.
Right.
And I think bitter is a good word to use. You have to find a way not to go through life being bitter.
Yeah.
And one of my classic sayings to the kids is, "Don't be bitter, reconsider." You know, and they kind of laugh, but I'm like, no, seriously, think about that.
Yeah.
Break that down, give that some thought sometime. And so I don't know. They laugh at me because I got all those little slogans,
It's I'm right trying to write them all down here, Coach. You need a little slogan book. I love it. It's good, and I know that a lot of times those things that you talked about when you're talking about not being bitter, and you talked about I thank God for putting my feet on the floor and doing things. I know these things seem cheesy. I people can look at it and go, okay, but that's just cheesy and it's kind of silly. But having those little, whenever I work with people, having those little slogans and those mindset triggers are very important, right? Because it helps us realize when we're being bitter or when we're not being grateful or we're having these negative emotions. And if we have these triggers, we're like, no, I don't want to act like this. I want to act like this. And if you can recognize and then make that change, you're starting to change that neural pathway to actually feel positive about something. And it doesn't happen overnight, but it's very possible. And it's that's why I love all these little slogans, because they matter
Yeah.
if you let them.
Yeah. Yeah, that and you know, it's so easy. Once the kids hear you say those little slogans over and over, it becomes a part of who they are. I honestly
Mm-hmm.
believe that. I mean, we have like talking about good practices and bad practices. One of my favorite ones is do it right, do it light, do it wrong, do
Mm-hmm.
it long. You know, and we can come in here and get our work done and have good energy and be out in an hour and 15 minutes, or we can come in here and bum around and feel sorry for ourselves and maybe an hour and 40 minutes. So do it
Yeah.
right. We're going to do it light. You know,
That's
I'm not
mean,
the guy to make a practice plan and say, okay, we're going to work on 4 guards 5 for 9 minutes. If we work on 4 guards 5 and in 3 minutes they're busting their butts and it looks good and we're rotating right, hey, we're moving on. I tell them, hey, you just chopped 6 minutes off practice. You know, how many minutes can you chop off on the next drill?
yeah. What a positive. I mean, that has to feel good, right? It's such a positive take on it, on a way to handle practice. And it's not about the time, it's about the effort, and it's about the getting it right.
Yeah, and we're big on that. I mean, and again, you know, I think some of the coaches in the area think I'm a nut, but we didn't have a practice over an hour long the whole postseason. And most of that hour was just spent walking and talking and going over the scouting report and the adjustments and the other team's personnel and the adjustments we were going to make and things like that. But you know, kids buy into that. I mean, they look at it as you know, it can't be a job to them. Everyone today, you know, with all the hours they put in, I mean, some of these kids put in 40 hours a week with lifting training. It's a job. Well,
Yeah.
it shouldn't be a job.
No. And they don't have time to sleep, and that's I mean, yeah, it's tough sometimes with the amount of school, the practice, the lifting, all that. Like, I agree.
Well, one of the biggest changes we made as a district was 5 years ago. I took a proposal to the board. We have a study hall during the day. We call it homeroom. It's like 35 minutes long. I'm like, hey, our kids traditionally get out of school at 2:50. I'm like, why don't we move that to the end of the day and allow all athletes who are in a sport to start practice at 2:15, so they don't
Mm-hmm.
go to homeroom. So most of our kids, you know, we get rolling at 2:30, and most of our kids, you know, for every sport, they're at home in time to sit down at 5:15, eat supper with the family. And
Yeah.
I know we don't do that a lot in today's society, but that alone has increased our numbers because they see, okay, a third of the practice time I'd been in school anyway, so really I'm
Yeah.
only out here for an hour, and it's just really helped our numbers. It's helped our kids' mentality. It Our parents love it because they're not out here at 5:30, quarter to 6, waiting to pick up a kid for practice and race to a siblings game.
Yeah.
You know, and it's been fantastic for all of our
So
programs.
yeah, and such a useful, yeah, and that's just looking at the situation, coach, and saying, here's what we need and how can this help, and that's yeah, that's a great idea. Um, I get the feeling, coach, that I can sit here and talk to you for a long time, but we don't, we gotta shut it down at some point. So the last question I always asked is, what did I not ask you that I should have? What did I miss that I shouldn't have? What should we talk about that I haven't?
Oh, just I don't know. I mean, you know, I think there's just so much good going on in our schools, especially in Illinois, and things like that. And I think probably the thing that frustrates me the most is, you know, is I think people perspective and perception. You know, a lot of people don't have a good perspective on things. Perception to many is the truth, and I think if people, you know, people would better understand athletics, coaches, and everybody if they would become more involved in the program. You know, willing to make that team meal, things like that. But I think the one thing we didn't touch on that I think has really made us successful here at Camp Point Central is the involvement we get from our parents and our community. I mean, our teams eat, get a meal catered before every home and away game. And I think, the parents don't get enough credit. They're just as busy as we are. They're busier today than what they were. And I think when you sit down, you talk high school athletics, it's always about the coaches, it's always about the players, and it's always about the program. Well, let me tell
Hmm.
you what, our parents make our coaches, our parents make our programs, and our parents do whatever we ask of them. And I think they're the most important ingredient that we choose not to honor, if you will.
Mm.
And I just don't think you can say enough about parents, because you talk about kids having everything going on in their lives. Well, look what the parents are dealing with:
Oh,
drugs, alcohol abuse of our kids, the vape, the pornography that's online, the Xbox. Everyone talks about these kids being lazy and soft. Or our parents today in our society, if they're doing their jobs right, they've got the toughest parenting job of any
oh.
decade before them.
Hmm. And and I appreciate you recognizing them and having the gratitude towards to the parents, because it's so important. And it's I feel like there's always such animosity between, maybe not where you are, but it can happen a lot of places. All this animosity between coaches, parents, and it just doesn't work well. It doesn't end well. I think that it has to find a way on both sides to make that relationship work.
And that's a two-way street. Why is
Yep.
there that animosity? What's the
Yeah.
number one reason why?
Let me know.
Playing time.
Yeah. I mean, it is mostly. Yeah.
So it's a two-way street. What the coaches need to do a better job of is making the parent realize that, like my daughter sitting on the bench and cheering, and a couple other girls for our team the whole game, that kid's just important to our team as a kid that's taking the charge, or scoring the points. And we don't do a very good job. Parents come to a game, they see their kids sitting on the bench, they go to awards banquet. It's always the stars that get talked about. My
Mm-hmm.
kid, this kid only gets one sentence: "Hey, had a great time with you this year."
Yeah.
So as a coach, you need to reach out, and you need to show these parents that this kid is just as important to us as every other kid. So it's a two-way street. And then once you do that, I think they understand, okay, playing time's important, but it might not be the most important ingredient
Right.
for developing my kid into a good human being.
Yeah. It really takes a lot of communication, a lot of intentional effort to do that with the parents. And I think but clearly it's working for you, and it's actually something that's, building your program. So it's worth the time and effort.
Well, yeah, because it makes your job easier.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Right.
They're all in, and
Yeah.
that's kind of what we ask them to be, is all in.
Yeah, and it allows you as the coach, because you start that conversation positively rather than having them come in with a negative about playing time, right? So you're starting that conversation early and often about what they're giving to your program and how you appreciate that, and having gratitude towards them. I think
Yeah.
that's a big part of it.
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to recruiting the kids in the hallway. I got a girl right now here, hasn't played basketball since she's been in high school. And every day I talk to her about going out. She's not a great player, but just her personality, her mentality, and everything, I think she would have a great impact on our program.
Yeah.
And so, sometimes people say, well, I got every good athlete in the school out. There's no one else walking the hallways I would want. Well, yes, there is.
There
And
is.
that's what develops your culture.
Yeah. Looking for those culture kids is important, and keeping those culture kids and keeping them happy and their parents happy. It's worth it.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, phenomenal conversation, Coach. I really appreciate you coming on. So much to hear, so much to learn from you. I appreciate the job you're doing, and I appreciate and congrats on the success. And I hope it continues for you.
Well, we hope so. We got a good group coming back next year, and got some good news the other day. Our 6'1" girl that didn't play a game this year is healthy, and she should be ready to roll next year. So we're looking forward to a good year, we hope.
Hey, yeah, I mean, you're always looking for those culture kids and wanting people that are gonna pump everybody up on the bench, but having your 6'1" center back helps too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
let's
Well,
let's be honest.
We'll love to have her down when we played Nashville this year in the Super.
Yeah, yep. It's yeah. So, hey, Coach, thanks for coming on. I appreciate it, and yeah, we'll talk again sometime, I'm sure.
Okay, and I appreciate everything you guys do, and appreciate it. We just
Thank you.
really do.
Thank
So,
you. Appreciate
thank
it.
you. All right.
Parents of athletes know that confidence and belief are fundamental for success. We want them to play without fear and without anxiety, but once those negative thoughts take over, it can derail years of work. Turning that anxiety into belief is similar to building strength and speed. It just takes intentional effort over time. Mental Mettle Coaching provides the individual drills needed to build the positive mindset necessary for success on the court and in life. Contact today to schedule a free coaching session and start building mental toughness in your athlete. Here's what I want, coaches listening. Just heard that interview with Coach Matt Long, who 600 plus wins. He's talking about being good in February, and he isn't good in February. They win a lot. I could go down his list of accomplishments, but 30 some years, 600 wins. It's worth listening to. What I want you to do, coaches, I would love you to actually look and determine what it is you've changed in the way you coach. Whether you've done it for 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, what have you actually changed? What are you doing different now from what you did before? Most of the time, coaches come in and we coach how we were coached, and that's not necessarily bad. We all grow up with some really good coaches, maybe some bad coaches as well, and we figure out what we like, what we don't like. But how much are you actually changing in what you do? And not just changing because you're like, well, as we talked in there, I don't want you changing because you say, well, kids are soft and I have to. That's the wrong mindset, right? What do I need to change to make myself better? What do I need to change to make my program better? What do I need to change about me and my program based on the fact that the world has changed? Okay. And to sit there and put your head in the sands and say, this is the right way to do it, and it needs to happen like this or else, it's going to be or else. It's not going to go well. Whether you want to, again, and he and I mentioned that in there, I hate the idea of saying kids are soft and kids are the problem and this is the problem. We can argue it if you want, and we can talk about the reasons why it is, and we can blame the generation before. We can blame TikTok and social media. We can blame if you want, but it doesn't do any good. We can instead figure out what we need to change to help today's athlete, to make today's athlete better, and finding ways to do that, and studying some different ideas. He's doing some different ideas that I love, that sometimes I don't think people understand how important it is. The visualization is a huge one. I do it with the athletes I work on all the time. And as he said it in there, the mind doesn't make a difference between a perceived something happen in our mind and in reality, which means, and this is something I do with athletes all the time, you can lay in bed at night and see yourself making 10 high pressure free throws, or sitting at the plate and going 10 for 10 over a 5-game stretch or something like that. Or it could be every swing I hit at a volleyball is a kill. You can sit in your bed at night visualizing those things and go 100%, and you're building that neural pathway to the positive receptors, the positive emotions, and you can build that positivity that's actually going to help in the game. Now, you still have to have practice. You still have to have the muscle memory. You have to have the swing, the your right swing. You have to have your shooting form and those things. I get that. I'm not saying you never have to practice, because that wouldn't work. But there does come a level where just shooting more, just hitting more isn't the answer. And actually laying in your bed and letting your body rest, but keeping your mind going and having this visualization has a lot of success. He talked about it. That's an anecdotal. I work with a lot of athletes. It's anecdotal, but he and I are both doing it based off of some very serious research that this matters, this visualization. He's talking about doing shorter practices, and that's sacrilegious at some point. Like, as coaches, we have so many things we think we got to do. We have to have this time. Practice has to be 2 or maybe even 3 hours long. If I'm not doing that, then we're not getting the most out of them, and we got to push them, push them, push them. And he's saying the opposite. He's got a very highly successful program, and after I get towards the second half of the season, they're doing an hour and 15, and in the postseason it's an hour, because he knows that keeping their bodies fresh and having the mental strength and just their mental health is so much more important. I know that maybe that wasn't how you were coached, or maybe doesn't fit with some of the ideas you grew up with, or you were told, or what you think the way it is. But have you actually thought about changing your practice times and making it be a positive environment, so you're not given consequences for negative actions, but actually rewarding positive actions with positive outcomes. Make it light, get it right, make it light, having this practice shorter if they do things well. It's a different mindset that it's worth exploring. I'm not saying you want to come in this next season, and change everything, but it's worth exploring. His idea of understanding what his Enneagram is and understanding how that changes his mindset on how he's handling situations, it's extremely useful. I highly suggest, as a coach, you should know what your Enneagram is, or do some other personality tests. They're not the be all end all, and I don't want them to be a crutch to explain and give excuses, but it helps you understand why you act like you do. Another one that I work with, and he didn't mention this, but it's the same kind of idea. I do some stuff with the John Gottman stuff and the Four Horsemen, and trying to understand how we respond to conflict. And if you can understand how you respond to conflict and how others understand how they respond to conflict, you're better in conflict, which is sports or conflict. And these situations come up. So you understand how you respond, how others might respond, and it helps you understand situations. It's more knowledge. He's also talking about coaching with this idea of gratitude. And it was really clear, and I know this just from my experience, that a lot of that gratitude came from his bout with cancer, and just learning how to deal with it, and how to be just the little things you have to be thankful for. I get to put my feet on the floor today and move forward, and that's gratitude. And if you get knocked down like that, the gratitude sometimes is all you have. You start to see the benefit of it, and how he applies that to the parents, and having so much gratitude for the parents, and how important it is for him to have such clear, strong, concise communication with the parents and the players about what that player's role is. He's, as he mentioned, the playing time is it's the thing that really causes a lot of angst and a lot of animosity between players and coaches. And he's just stopping it before it's a problem. Here's your role. Here's why your role is so important, and what we expect for you from the team, and what we want, how you can help the team. That stops a whole lot of the conversation about playing time. And if that's the only thing that you act like matters is the playing time, then that's the only thing the parents are going to think it matters, and the players think that's the only thing that matters. And so addressing that early is Very useful. And it's clearly, he talked about, I forget what he said, 2007 is the last time he had a parent complaint coming in about playing time. That doesn't happen on accident. That is something he's definitely working on. So those are just some ideas of what he does. What could you look at your program and say, what is something I could do differently? What's a completely different idea that we could try? You don't have to do it an entire season. You can say, hey, this week I'm going to do practices that are short and let's see how that goes, right? Don't be scared to try something, especially early on in a season. See how it works. See what the benefits is. See what the rewards are. See how the kids respond to it. Don't be scared to try different things, especially if it's trying different things that lean into positivity, right? Things that are about gratitude and making them feel better about their situations and making it be somewhere that they want to be. And yeah, what are you willing to change? What would you like to change? Coaches, make a list. If you're in the off season, make a list. What is one thing I want to change? What is one thing I want to try? When am I going to be intentional about what you want? He talked about transforming his program, and he probably didn't need to transform his program. He's had a really good program over the years, and he's already working on transforming it. If a guy with 600 wins can look at things he wants to do differently next year, so can you. I mean, that might be the benefit or the real secret to his success. So if he can look to change some stuff, so can you. So been a great interview. As always, guys, thank you so much for the support. Thank you for liking, sharing, commenting, everything. Get the information out there. I love what I do. I love putting this out there. I love helping kids. I love working with coaching staffs, and I need you to help me do that and get that out there. So I appreciate it. So once again, this has been the Mental Mettle Podcast. I'm your host, Coach Matt Thomann, and always remember to forge your mettle. Thanks again for listening to the Mental Mettle Podcast, produced by Coraggio Media, sponsored by QuickCut, a video management platform for every level of play, and by Mental Mettle Coaching, helping athletes learn to face adversity in a spirited and resilient way. The Mental Mettle Podcast is created each week to help players develop more mental toughness, and that is something that will help all of us. So help me out and like and share the Mental Mettle Podcast with your friends. Until next time, keep forging your mettle.